Hey good people, I'm doing one of my favorite things today, and that is pruning Japanese maples. This guy right here was where I started filming a few years back, and it's good to be back in this garden. There are some things that need to be addressed, lots of information hopefully to disseminate, and lots of questions to generate. So I'm going to share with you what it is that I'm doing today. There are several varieties of Japanese maple, so follow along and enjoy the video, and please ask the questions, make the comments. Well, this is it. This is the first tree that I started my YouTube with, talking about, at that time we were talking about some of the growth that comes out below the graft bud, which is right there in the ground cover, and you can see the same issue that existed then exists now. As we're revisiting this, you can see this green growth that's coming out here, Japanese maple leaves. So the look is very consistent, obviously, because it's grafted onto a hardy rootstock. And here's the graft bud union right here. And so I will trim off all of these that are growing below the graft. Because this is the desired foliage, the desired tree, if you will. And so I don't need to prune off necessarily anything above there unless it specifically is what I want for the overall aesthetic of the tree. The first consideration on this tree, though, is that this is the one that is over the handrail and the sidewalk leading to the front door of the home. So sometimes pruning isn't solely and completely about the aesthetic. There's a functionality sometimes to what we're doing, and whether we're raising canopies above a sidewalk, whether we're raising canopies above the road, or we're just trying to free up the access and the flow going into the home like we do here. There are, as we've talked about before, a number of reasons why we're doing the trimming that we're doing. Okay, now I am working on the specific delineation. And this, I gotta say, I think is a very artistic sort of endeavor, choice on my part. It may not look like the way that somebody else would make those choices, but I believe that the intent is very much the same in terms of identifying layers. Some call them, I've heard it referred to as clouds, just a separation of little areas. You can see I'm working on one over there. Now I kind of have this overall matting right here that I need to do something with. At the same time, I like to take into consideration knowing the response of the tree, not getting overzealous in a single season by removing too much of the living canopy. Because the last thing I want to do is stress the tree into any level of shock or decline. Well, we know not all deadwood is created equal, and while this has a decent amount of deadwood in it, it also has a decent size of deadwood in it. So yeah, got to make the cut right so that it can compartmentalize over that. You can see that right there is kind of where I want to be with an angle away. Well, let's just do it. Okay, let's just do it. Slow down so you don't rip on the out. And there it is. I might get my little pruning knife out, or even just my clippers, because I'm just kind of obsessed that way. As much as I like to prune and do the ornamental on trees, I also like to see the tree thrive and recover. And this climate tends to be a little rough on some trees, a lot of trees, Japanese maples in particular. And so I weigh against being artistic in an ornamental way against the value of the canopy. And this tree has been in recovery. It was pretty significantly stressed when I was here before. And so not only did I remove the dead wood, but there were certain micronutrients and fertilizer, etc., that were applied, and the transformation is pretty significant. However, it's still a work in process, and I'm not going to take an amazing amount of foliage out of this, because the photosynthesis is really what is important for the tree right now to continue to recover. So mostly this go around, it's dead wood, a little obstructing branches, and that's really it. Nature has sort of created its own aesthetic with this tree. I have to tell you about my what I call my groovy new tool. You know, tools that make the job easier are I'm always interested in it, and I was introduced to this one the other day. It's a fixed pole, 7 feet long, by steel, however you choose to pronounce it, wherever you're from. But boy, this allows me to get up and do some trimming like I would do with my hand clippers, except that I can stand back and kind of look at what I'm doing. Right now I'm just getting some dead wood off of that branch. Would like to see that branch do a lot better. Yeah, this way I don't have to go up on my 6-foot ladder for just the tiniest little branch. I can reach right up there. Now, I'm not sponsored by Steel in any way. Would love to be. I've used their chainsaws and saws, pole saws, for most of my career. Just been my preference. But yeah, this tool has proven to be very helpful, very handy. Also kind of handy to reach things. Here's something that I do quite a bit, and if I haven't already talked about it, I'll probably talk about it many more times, is in the process of focusing on these Japanese maples. That may mean that I got to get something back away from them that's a little bit more aggressive. The native oak here is not that aggressive, but I do want to favor the maple. So I'm not here to prune that guy, but I will get him back away from this maple. Do the same thing back here on the back side. Now, obviously, plant material grows at different rates and different speeds. Japanese maples, especially lace maples, tend to grow a lot slower than most. You can see this Oregon grape has overtaken the canopy here, and not that I mind some foliage overlapping, but we definitely want to favor this very nice, very ornamental Japanese lace maple. And so I'm going to get the Oregon grape out of there, and you're going to see me do that as I go along today and get several of the plants out and away from overtaking these beautiful trees, but I want to do it obviously in a way that there's still a nice aesthetic to the surrounding plant material. So sometimes pruning in the fashion of ornamental and the gardening practices that I talk about are a lot of aesthetics. So with this guy, I'm looking for a couple of things right now, mostly dead wood. I always kind of start with the dead wood. As I said before, it kind of gives me an opportunity to, as it were, just stroll through the canopy to see what's going on, what's overlapping, what's redundant, what's unhealthy. So right now I'm just really focused on getting the dead wood out of here. But then, you know, I really don't want branches just lying on the ground. And so that's a given. I'm going to trim that up. That ends up coming back a ways. And I'm not aggressive in my pruning. I see some Japanese maple videos where people get quite dramatic with the cuts that they're making, and they'll reduce the overall canopy significantly, and I find that the really causes a lot of very unnatural look to the tree. Even that cut that I just made, there's probably the extreme of what I would want to do in this process. But you can begin to see that now, as I've gone through here and I have taken out dead wood and continue to take out dead wood, I'm starting to look at kind of the tiers, the shelves, the poofs, if you will. Not that I'm trying to create a topiary, more leaning towards what I think a bonsai needs to look like. I'm going to do the rest of this from the underside, which, given how close this is to the ground, means that I need to get down below in this window well. Getting underneath the tree, again like this, you want to be careful. Japanese maples, Japanese lace maples, even maples in general, there's a certain level of flexibility in the branches, but you don't want to get too excessive. You start breaking branches. You know, sometimes I realize I'm maybe way too cautious. I overthink the cuts that I make, but I always tell people I can always take off more, but I can't put it back. And so I really wanted to see the extent of the damage here and see if there was any way to reasonably salvage this branch, that the structural integrity hadn't been compromised to the point that maybe this could stay, and over time some healing taking place. And by healing I mean compartmentalization. But when I look at some of the older wounds, come and take a look all the way down here towards the bottom. I mean, look at this cut that was made several years ago, and the collar where the wound would here is just taking its sweet time. And I've got an issue here with a piece that broke off years ago and was cut back, and I can see this where it's trying to close in, and I'm just this lends me to not be very optimistic about that earlier cut that I was showing you. And so I really think that this calls for the removal of this branch back down to here at least. I may even next year choose to take it down to here, because this just isn't going to amount to anything in a reasonable period of time. That's the sad part of a heavy wet snow, because that's a lot of foliage. I'm simply hoping this doesn't take quite so long to close in around that. It's starting to do its thing, but at the same time, some of this wood is getting soft right around here, and I don't want it to compromise the interior of the tree and have the whole tree fail as a result. You know, I want to talk again, this applies to any tree, but since we're talking about these Japanese maples especially, look at the mulch that was put in here. I mean, the mulch has just been piled against the trunk. I don't know how many times that I'm going to need to have the conversation with people, probably until the day I die, and then somebody will put too much mulch around my gravestone. But yeah, this is not supposed to have mulch up against the trunk. It's certainly not supposed to have mulch in the crotch of the tree. Who on earth, you know, these companies that come in and throw mulch around with a shovel, or maybe they spray it in with a truck mounted, I guess you could call, applicator. It's not an exact science. However, it is a science that says that you can cause significant damage to the tree by putting the trunk in mulch. Roots below the ground, and that's the only thing that should be mulched, and mulch is great for covering your roots to a degree, but yeah, don't mulch up against your trees, please, for the tree's sake. You know, we've had multiple conversations about girdling roots, and I just discovered in the process of moving back this mulch that was put down that we've got a root here that is potentially going to be an issue. It's small enough, I can still remove it without significant consequence to the tree. Sometimes when it starts growing into the tree, it's sort of a point of diminishing returns to try to remove the girdling root then, but now there's no chance that as this trunk continues to expand that root is going to cut off the circulatory system by girdling the trunk right there. So this again is a real reason I'm not a fan of letting just your random landscape maintenance company trim something off, because as I talk about, not cutting at the right point can lead to issues with rot and damage going in. It's not compartmentalizing as it should, and in this case, once I remove that, sure enough, you can see that damage is going into the interior of this particular stem because it was not trimmed in the correct place. Oh, this is kind of fun. You know, I love volunteers. I've got a couple in my landscape that I took from another job where they had Japanese maples, but this one looks like it was a gift from a bird. It was planted here probably sometime in the last 8 or 10 years, but I think it's very appropriate for this landscape because obviously we have so many Japanese maples, and so I'm going to treat it like it was meant to be. And we're going to help by letting Mother Nature know that we appreciate the addition. And so we're just going to do a quick little cleanup here of some dead wood. I'm going to give this a little fertilization because the color is actually off a little bit, indicating to me it is struggling with some micronutrient issues. And remember, because it's not going to have the hardy rootstock that we saw in some of the other Japanese maples, because it did grow from seed, there may be problems like the issue that we're seeing right now in the leaf that we're going to have to compensate for. Again, we don't know exactly what we're going to get in the long run, but there's no harm in working with nature. So this really is the best part of this landscape, is the backyard, the over canopy of mature trees and the Japanese maples. Come on back and take a look, if you will. I'll just walk in behind you. So as you can see, this is a pretty magnificent garden when it comes to just the Japanese maples, and I'm thrilled to be working in it and maintaining it. I gotta say, over what we had when we started a couple years ago, through proper fertilization and whatnot, the trees are looking pretty healthy. And that's really the objective. Health first, then the aesthetic of the pruning second. So while most of the maples here have made a pretty significant recovery, and what I'm doing is just removing precious little dead wood before shaping, this one over here is struggling a little more than the others. I'm going to have to remove a pretty significant dead piece here and some smaller dead piece up above. But one of the things I need to do too is this European beech is going to need to, even though it's a lovely upper canopy in terms of keeping shade and whatnot on the trees, it is really causing some phototropism where the maple is having to lean hard towards the light. So I'm going to do some trimming of the beech as well, but I got to get this dead bit off of here because this is, again, just not productive for the tree to try to hold on to, and we want it to compartmentalize around that wound like this. You can see the ridge coming up around and closing off of a cut I did a couple of years ago. You know, dead wood is dead wood, and sometimes the cut that has to be made isn't the best cut in the world, and where this stem is coming up off of this main trunk, this is great. This is a great angle on that, but this fork is dead and this fork continues to live. So this doesn't have the most impressive place to really form that wound wood, but we do what we have to. Yeah, you can see there's no active cambium there, so I may trim that back even just a little bit further because I really want that to close in. And this one over here, this side over here that I have my finger on, is what I'm talking about. This is how I want it to close in around the wound. Yeah, there's green cambium right there. Oh, look at that, see, green. I've got green all the way around here now. So it's a better opportunity for that to compartmentalize around. I can see that's been dead long enough for that discoloration to take place, but we'll call that good for now. I'll take a look at it next year and might have to do a little bit more maintenance on it right there. So what I'm looking for when I start getting into the details is deadwood, obviously, where I want to create space. Branches are growing together. Just kind of working with the natural flow, if you will, of nature. We've got redundant, I mean, look at how many branches we have coming out of an old wound here. What do I want to do with that? For now, maybe I just want to leave it alone. Pruning is never a one and done thing. So I know I'm going to be back here again and again and again in years to come. So I'm making decisions and choices not just for today, but for the long term for this tree. So right now, mostly though, I'm just focused on deadwood and anything that's sort of growing into redundant space, as it were. I'm a little bit concerned about this tree. And again, the introduction of more mulch around the base of it isn't helpful, but this only has an effective circulatory system on the tree for about half. It's this other side here, away from the camera. And the funny thing is that despite that, we still have a pretty vigorous growing main branch here. So we continue to try to keep the mulch and whatnot off the base there and keep this fertilized, well hydrated through the season and even into winter. And it seems to be continuing to do fairly well. But I anticipate that this one is probably going to come out in the next couple of years. So this is kind of a perfect example of what I'm talking about, just a lot of congestion going on, and it's over the walkway. So I'm going to raise it a little bit. I'm going to thin it a little bit, get it off of the pathway here. And I am, again, kind of conservative, take a little bit off of it at a time. So it is so challenging to try to put it back on. But always easy to take off maybe just a little bit more. So this is kind of where I'm at for this season. Now we can easily walk under here with maybe just a little bit of ducking. I'm okay with that because of the nature of the garden that is created here. This branch just turn and go back the other direction. It's not a big deal. Maybe I don't want it to grow right up against the trunk. And again, I'm thinning here because out of several of these places where branches are growing off the trunk, there's a little bit of redundancy and completely unnecessary. So a little bit of that thinning, but I'm not going to lion tail it. I am not going to trim off every single branch all the way out here. That's just aesthetically disastrous and not lion tailing. If anybody's done any studying about trees, they know that lion tailing, which is the removal of all of the lateral growth along the stem until you get out to the very end and you kind of leave a little tuft of limbs, that's not healthy for the tree at all. And the last thing we want to be doing is stressing the tree some more. So yeah, I'm liking what I see here. This kind of pruning is as much about aesthetics as it is the health of the tree. So yeah, deadwood, spacing, redundancy, obstructions, health, all those things as we trim along. So thank you for joining me today. I'll probably sneak in here and do a little bit more. And I have, as always, enjoyed your company. Please follow along as we continue on our reels, long content, and just gardening in general.